will know that we had a big presentation that from last week, so I couldn't really do much stuff. So sorry for just a relative lack of details. I don't plan on making this very long because it's just one moment in history I want to cover. So yeah, I'll pick the pen. Pen. Okay. Yeah. So happy Valentine's Day. Also, happy Valentine's Day Massacre. Because lovely. So Valentine's Day Massacre is probably one of the, I guess, bloodiest times of the 1920s. And no dip, this is pretty big, I guess. So we need some background here. So Valentine's Day Massacre happens in 1929, and this is in Chicago. So this is Chicago. Camera. Okay, so this is Chicago, right? And remember, at this time is the Roaring '20s. So this is when there's a really high economic prosperity.
Example: the early modern Millie took place during this time period.
Yep, and it's also a time of illegal bootlegging. Example: a thoroughly modern Millie took time in this time period. Yep. So, prohibition was set in Chicago as well as the rest of the world because, not the rest of West America because of the amendment. Gangs decided this was a really great way to make money, and so they decided to bootleg it. So they made alcohol legally and sold it at really high prices and really weak strengths. None of the police in Chicago really wanted to enforce the law because, first of all, many of them didn't really support it, so they really couldn't care less. And also because the time of gangs like Al Capone and the rest of them were bound. So, if you have money, you have power. So the gangs decide to use their influence to basically cajole, beat up, and bribe public officers who didn't really agree with the policies. And so, basically they control Chicago. And they also constantly fought each other to keep each other off their own turf and business. Because there's this kind of a gangster code that you had to make an illegal business like friendly, sort of. Like, if you're making illegal business in one place, you can't intrude into someone else's territory and steal their business. And if that happens, then fights and deaths and stuff would resolve, which was, pretty bloody. So this is Al Capone. So Al Capone is basically the head of Chicago and the head of Chicago's crime syndicate. So he owns, I wish I had a map here, but he owns a really huge swath of Chicago. It's almost I don't want to give a bad estimate, but I would say probably 70% of Chicago is under his gang's control. So,
wasn't he the reason he was arrested for the biggest
income tax evasion?
Wait, what?
Yeah, he got arrested for income tax evasion.
Yeah.
But he was really good at that. He was not arrested for treating other people. So it's kind of surprising. Anyways, so at one point in his life, a $50,000 bounty is placed on his head, and this triggers him. So, who placed the bounty on his head? It wasn't actually this guy, but some other gangster in relation to this guy placed the bounty on Capone's head. So this is Bugs Moran. So this is another one of the big shot gangsters in Chicago at this time.
He's handsomer than Al Capone.
I don't have such opinion like that. Anyways.
Al Capone is the real Scarface, so actually that makes sense.
Yep. So Bugs Moran is the leader of a rival gang from Al Capone's, and it's a lot smaller than Al Capone's, definitely, but still has a pretty big influence on Chicago. So the gang that Bugs Moran controlled, the previous leader, Dean O'Banion, who had a really big interest in flowers because gangsters always send their flowers to each other's funerals after they bump them off, just to be nice. The previous leader had been bumped off by Capone, not personally, and so Bugs Moran wanted revenge on that. And so one of his other associates that I mentioned before, he placed a bounty on Capone's head, and Capone got really mad. Also because Bugs Moran had repeatedly tried to kill Capone. At one example, Capone is at a hotel, and Bugs Moran and his gang, they go to the hotel and they fire thousands of bullets at the hotel for I don't know, I don't want to lie or anything, but I would say they fired bullets for probably at least a while, maybe an hour, I don't know. But he tried to kill Al Capone many times. Al Capone has always been lucky and survived, and so Al Capone decided that, this $50K header, I'm triggered. So let's get rid of this game. So anyways, the massacre happens, and this is the point where my slide degrades in quality. So, sorry. Anyways. So on 1929 Valentine's Day, a bootleg whiskey delivery is supposed to go to Bugs Moran's headquarters. Okay, so Bugs Moran arrives a little late, and so he sees policemen walk up to the headquarters, and so he fears he's going to get caught. Like, it doesn't matter if this gangster's going to get caught. Obviously, he just doesn't want to get caught, so he hangs behind, which is pretty bad because. I'm not going entirely in order because it's a little better if it's presented as a little bit of a mystery. Because nobody actually knows who perpetrated this. So what happened was that inside the headquarters there were 7 men, and they were all shot. And from the position of the bodies, it was clear that all the 7 men were facing the wall, and they all had been shot in the back, and none of them had pulled up their weapon. It's like they died without a fight. One of them was still alive when the real police came in. I'll get to that later. When the real police came in, and gangster code is that you deny that any other gangster had contributed to your death. So of course he says nothing. So when the police ask him who killed you.
Okay, if they're asking you to who just killed you, I don't think you're gonna answer.
Yeah. Anyway, so when it said that 2 police had walked in and walked in with 2 hoodlums at gunpoint, this is a little fishy, obviously. I mean, it was true, but this is the end quote of it because I didn't have time to finish this. But in the words of Bugs Moran, only Al Capone could have done this because there was no evidence that, there was literally no evidence to pin down anybody who did this sort of crime. But it seems to have been most likely to be Al Capone because it was only time and place where he could have done it. So the thinking behind it goes that Al Capone's henchmen are disguised as policemen, and then they enter the Moran headquarters and pretend to hold up the 7 gang members from Moran's gang, and as they hold them up, so the gang members aren't going to shoot back, and then 2 more of Al Capone's henchmen walk in with both machine guns and basically gun the 7 hostages down, and then the gangsters disguised as policemen take the other 2 with machine guns out and pretend to arrest them so that they don't attract any suspicion. So Al Capone basically destroys Bugs Moran's gang, and this is also the point in time where Al Capone gets pinned as a ruthless criminal rather than a respectable businessman. I mean, Al Capone had already made a significant media presence in this time. There were a few people who pointed him out as a cold-hearted, ruthless killer, but to most people, he was just a really successful businessman who donated a lot of money to the poor and charities and stuff like that. But at this point, it's kind of the time when everybody started to notice him for the real person he was, and he does get arrested a few years later for income tax evasion, not for murdering because no evidence. So that was short, but thank you.